It started with rain, not the dramatic kind that drums on rooftops or pounds against glass, like a warning. No, this was the quiet kind, the kind that creeps into your collar, seeps through your shoes, and stays with you long after you've gone inside. The kind that makes everything feel heavier than it already is. I was supposed to be on my way home. I'd wrapped up a late meeting, grabbed a coffee I didn't need, and was halfway to the freeway when I saw David's car. Parked right outside Maison Alouette, the new French place he said was too expensive for people like us. I slowed. My fingers hovered above my steering wheel, undecided. Then I pulled over. I told myself maybe it was a client dinner. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I needed to stop being so suspicious. I crossed the street before I could change my mind. The rain clung to me like static as I walked past the glowing windows, heart pounding with no logical reason. That's when I saw them, David and a woman I didn't recognize at first. They were laughing. Her hand was on his. His face, God, his face was lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Not a quick peck. Not the kind of kiss you give someone to be polite or secretive. This one was slow, familiar, reverent. The kind you give someone you miss when they're gone for the day. The kind he used to give me. I couldn't breathe. For a second, I wasn't sure if it was the cold or the shock tightening my chest. My body felt frozen while everything inside me screamed. I wanted to look away, but my eyes wouldn't obey. I stood there in the rain watching the man I'd married, the man I'd built a life with, give everything I once had to someone else. He touched her cheek. She smiled at him like she knew she was safe, loved. I stepped back onto the sidewalk. My heels splashed into a puddle I didn't feel. I had just watched my husband fall in love with someone who wasn't me. The next morning, I sat at my desk in the office staring blankly at my inbox while my coffee went cold. The night before had played on repeat in my head, like a looped security tape. David's smile, the kiss her hand in his. My throat still ached from holding back the scream I never let out. But I hadn't said a word, not to him, not yet. I was still trying to make it make sense. Maybe it was a work dinner. Maybe she was a client. Maybe I had misunderstood what I saw. Maybe. At 10:14 a.m., an email pinged into my inbox from Kelly Simmons, one of our finance leads. It was a forwarded calendar confirmation for Thursday's recurring lunch meeting at the firm. A small, dull thing until I saw the name David Donovan copied at the bottom. He wasn't supposed to be in the city that Thursday. He had told me he'd be in Boston all week. An investor's pitch. New seed round strategy. Tight schedule, babe. I'll be swamped. I remembered those words clearly because I had offered to come with him, turn it into a weekend, and he'd laughed it off. You'd be bored out of your mind, he said. But he had been in town, at lunch, with someone from our office. I read the email twice, then a third time. It wasn't even meant for me. Kelly had meant to copy Claire from HR. I was the accidental recipient. One mistake. One stupid, accidental click. It was like watching a crack form in glass, so thin at first, you could pretend it wasn't there. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And slowly it begins to spread. I opened my calendar history, scrolled back through the weeks. Little things began to jump out. Dinners rescheduled at the last minute. Trips extended a day longer than planned. Receipts he asked me to sign off on because he'd lost track. I'd brushed it all off for months, trusted him blindly, but now I couldn't stop the knowing. It was spreading. One small mistake in an email, and the whole illusion started to crumble. I didn't wait. That same afternoon, I left work early under the guise of a migraine and drove straight to a small private investigator's office tucked between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. His name was Vince, middle-aged, discreet, and completely unimpressed by emotion. When I handed him David's photo and said, I think he's seeing someone, he just nodded like he'd heard it 1,000 times before, because he had. Within 5 days, he had a file ready. A thick beige envelope slid across his desk like a death sentence. Her name was Rachel Meyer, 32, marketing director at a competing biotech firm, recently promoted. Attractive in that curated Instagram perfect way. Designer handbags, soft waves. Confidence built for cameras. Vince had photos of them at restaurants, parks, even a hotel downtown. Once at a bookstore, oddly domestic. Each picture burned like acid. I told myself I didn't need to see more. But I did. I kept flipping. And then I saw it. In one of the photos, Rachel was sitting across from David at a cafe patio, holding a small blue box in her hands. Her face lit up with surprise. I zoomed in. It was Tiffany, not just any piece, but the bracelet. I had seen it in his browser history 6 weeks ago while searching for a saved login. At the time, I closed the tab quickly, pretending not to see. He had told me he was planning something special for our anniversary. I even told my mother. He's finally trying again, I'd said. He's listening. He was, just not to me. Vince cleared his throat and handed me a printed email. Thought you might want this too. Looks like there's a big dinner reservation this Friday, Maison Alouette. Birthday celebration under Rachel's name. Private room booked. 8 guests. Maison Alouette. The same place I saw them kiss. The place I'd asked David about months ago. He called it overpriced and pretentious. I sat back in my chair, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. Rage white-hot bloomed somewhere behind my ribs. It didn't feel sharp, it felt steady, focused. The blue Tiffany box was supposed to be mine. The next morning, I opened the new email from Vince. One more thing he wrote. Found this on her gym intake form, emergency contact. Looks like her parents. Attached was a scanned document, clean and simple. Her mother's name, phone number, and a Colorado address. I stared at the number for a long time. Every instinct screamed at me to close the laptop, walk away, pretend I never saw it. But something colder, calmer, overrode the noise. Not revenge, not yet, just curiosity. The line rang 3 times before someone picked up. Hello, a warm voice, polished, gentle. Hi, Mrs. Meyer. My voice was even detached. I know this is unexpected. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm calling about your daughter, Rachel. There was a pause. Oh, is something wrong? No, I said quickly. Nothing like that. I work with someone she's seeing. David Donovan. Oh. The warmth returned. Yes, we've heard so much about David. Rachel says he's wonderful. She told us he's a bit older, very successful. Widowed, wasn't he? I smiled bitterly. Something like that? Well, we haven't met him yet. But we're flying in this Friday for her birthday. Big surprise. She thinks we can't come, but her father and brothers are thrilled. We made reservations at some French restaurant Maison, something Maison Alouette, I said, almost whispering. That's the one, she said brightly. She's been talking about it for months. We'll be waiting at the table when she walks in. My pulse ticked slowly in my throat. I looked at the bracelet photo again. At Rachel's glowing face. At David leaning toward her. Mrs. Meyer, I said slowly. Maybe we can coordinate. I was planning something for them too. It might be fun, if we all surprised her together. Oh, that sounds lovely. I thanked her and hung up. My hand was still on the phone when I caught my reflection in the darkened laptop screen, still silent, composed. I didn't recognize her. Her eyes didn't look like they'd been crying. They looked like they'd already decided. Maybe we can all surprise her together, I said aloud again, my voice smoother than my heart. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat curled on the living room couch in an old college sweatshirt surrounded by silence too thick to break. The city hummed softly outside, but inside it felt like time had stopped. My laptop sat open beside me, the PI's folder still on the screen, damning and frozen. I opened a different folder, one labeled Wedding. Photos filled the screen, David smiling, me glowing. Our friend's champagne sunset on the vineyard behind us. My breath caught as I stared at one where he was kissing my forehead. At the time it had felt tender. Now it felt like a distraction, a sleight of hand. Look here, not there. We had been married 8 years, built a business together from nothing. When banks wouldn't fund him, I liquidated a portion of my inheritance. I gave him the runway. I believed in his dream more than mine. We tried for children, 2 failed IVF rounds, 1 miscarriage. He held me while I sobbed on the bathroom floor, told me we'd try again, then told me maybe we should pause because life was already stressful. That was 2 years ago. It all started to shift after that. Little comments, "You're being dramatic." Little corrections, "Maybe your meds are making you paranoid." Little silences nights when he stayed late and smelled like a cologne I didn't wear. And I had blamed myself. I'd gone to therapy, asked my doctor to adjust my dosage, tried yoga, tried silence, tried to stop being needy. He said that word often like a diagnosis, needy. A tear slipped down my cheek. Not from sadness, something deeper. Grief, yes, but also fury. For the time I lost trying to fix myself while he was the one shattering us. I opened a drawer and pulled out an old letter. A birthday card he wrote me 4 years ago, back when things still felt soft. I'd kept it all this time because of one line. "No matter where life takes us, I'll never stop choosing you." I tore it in half, then in half again. Had everyone seen this coming except me? By Thursday morning, the fog in my mind had cleared. Not because I felt better, just because I felt ready. I began with the bank. Quietly moved my salary into a separate account my mother had insisted I keep all those years ago, just in case she'd said when we opened it. I'd laughed then. I wasn't laughing now. Next was the lawyer. I called a discreet divorce attorney recommended by Jenna, who after one look at me in the office that day, had canceled her lunch meeting and closed her door. "Tell me everything," she said. Arms crossed, voice low. I did. She didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp. When I finished, she reached for her phone. "You're not doing this alone." The attorney was efficient, sharp, and more than a little amused when I told her my husband's name. He testified against one of my past clients during a messy split, she said, flipping through a file. Claimed the wife was unstable, charming but slippery. "You'll need hard proof." I smiled thinly, already working on that. Afterward, Jenna drove me to the salon. "You need to feel like you again," she said. "And we need war paint." I got the works. Highlights, manicure, blood-red nails, a facial so soothing I almost forgot why I was doing this. When I emerged, the reflection in the mirror startled me. I looked like someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to claim. Back home, I pulled out a garment bag from the back of my closet. The red dress. The one David once called a little much for our anniversary dinner. It still fit perfectly. Hugged the parts of me he had stopped noticing. I paired it with my mother's pearl earrings, slipped into black heels, and placed my signed legal documents into my purse like a loaded weapon. My phone buzzed. "Jenna, tomorrow, 7:45. I'll be parked at the bar. You're not walking in alone." I stared at myself in the mirror, heart steady for the first time in weeks. If I was going to burn my life down, I'd do it in heels and diamonds. Maison Alouette glowed like a jewelry box against the night. Candles flickered in every window, casting soft shadows over white linen tables and crystal glasses. I stepped out of the Uber just before 7:45 p.m., the hem of my red dress catching the wind like a flag before battle. Jenna was already inside. Table 2 from the back, she'd texted. "I've got eyes on them. It's go time." A black SUV pulled up beside me. The Myers spilled out Rachel's mother in a cream shawl, her father adjusting his blazer, and 2 tall men I assumed were her brothers. I recognized her mother's voice instantly. "You must be Claire," she exclaimed, reaching for a hug. "Thank you so much for helping us pull this off." "Rachel's going to lose her mind." "I think so too," I said with a calm smile. Her father shook my hand firmly. "David speaks very highly of you. Said you're the reason their department runs so well." My smile didn't waver. "David says a lot of things." Jake and Daniel introduced themselves, cheerful and unsuspecting. "We haven't seen Rach in months," one of them said. "She's been so secretive lately, but she sounds really into this guy." I nodded. Tonight should be revealing. The maitre d' appeared. Ready for the surprise, Rachel's mother beamed. "Let's go shock her." We entered the restaurant like a quiet storm. The hostess led us toward the back past rows of intimate tables, hushed laughter, and tinkling glasses. I saw them before they saw me, Rachel, in a soft blue dress, laughing at something David had just said. He was wearing the shirt I bought him last Christmas. He looked relaxed, younger, lighter. Like someone who had finally outrun his past. Until I stepped forward. He reached across the table for her hand. And then, as if pulled by gravity, he looked up. Our eyes met. And in that fraction of a second, before he could hide it, before he could adjust, I saw it. Not surprise, not guilt, fear. David looked up, and for a second, I saw fear take the place of charm. "Happy birthday, Rachel," I said loud enough to turn heads. David's fork clattered against his plate. Rachel turned toward me, blinking like someone waking from a dream. Confusion crossed her face, followed quickly by recognition and then dread. "Claire," David croaked, half rising from his seat. "What are you? How did you surprise?" I said evenly before, stepping aside to reveal the second act. "Mom." Dad, Rachel's voice cracked. What are you doing here?" Her mother looked between us. "We came for your birthday, sweetie." Claire helped us coordinate. "Isn't this wonderful?" Rachel's lips parted, but nothing came out. Then her father turned to David. "You must be David, the gentleman Rachel's been seeing." David opened his mouth. "I'm his wife," I said, cutting him off. "Claire Donovan, married 8 years. The silence that followed hit harder than a slap. Rachel's mother blinked. "Wife, but..." "Rachel said you were divorced." "Last year. No papers were filed," I said calmly, pulling a sleek envelope from my purse. "Until this week, when I filed them." Rachel's brothers stood shoulders squaring. "You're married," one of them asked David. "And you brought our sister into this." She knew, I said, laying down a photo. This was them last spring. Park View Hotel. While David was supposedly at a conference. "Here's Christmas Eve," he told me. He was working late. I slid out the Tiffany receipt. "And here's the bracelet," he gave her, originally marked anniversary gift. Rachel's face had gone ghostly pale. "You told me," she started, voice breaking. "He lies," I said simply, "to everyone." I turned to her parents. "Your dinner charged to a business account I helped set up. I'm still listed as CFO. That makes this corporate misappropriation." David blanched. "Claire, please, let's not do this here." "You mean publicly," I said, "where people can hear?" "Where you can't twist it into something else behind closed doors." Waitstaff froze mid-step. Diners leaned in. Someone at the bar began recording. David looked around, cornered. "You lied to everyone, David, and now everyone knows." I didn't wait for dessert. As Rachel stammered and her family circled around her like a closing gate, I turned on my heels and walked out of Maison Alouette. Jenna was already waiting outside in the car. She didn't say anything, just reached over and took my hand. I didn't know I was shaking until I felt her squeeze. The next morning, I turned off all my notifications. Social media had exploded. Someone posted a blurry video of the confrontation and hashtags had already begun forming. Birthday reckoning. I didn't care. For once, the audience didn't matter. David tried calling, then texting, then emailing. I ignored every message. By Monday, the divorce papers had been formally delivered. My lawyer added financial misconduct to the petition. His silence after that was louder than any apology. Weeks passed. One chilly Sunday afternoon, Rachel messaged me from an unknown number. "I don't deserve your time, but I'd like to talk. Just once. No defenses." I agreed to meet. Neutral ground. A coffee shop in the city with quiet corners. She looked smaller in person than she did in the photos. Less polished. More human. She didn't order anything, just sat across from me with her hands wrapped around an empty mug. I knew, she said after a long pause. "Not at first, but eventually." I just didn't want to believe it. I nodded. "He made it easy to believe what you wanted to hear." "My family won't speak to me," she whispered. I ruined everything. I looked at her and felt no rage, only the weight of knowing. "You didn't ruin it," I said. You were just willing to keep it even when you knew someone else was losing everything. She blinked. Why did you do it like that, the public scene? I shrugged. Because I spent years being told I was imagining things. I needed witnesses. She looked down. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We simply sat there, two women unraveling from the same storm. As I stood to leave, I said quietly, "We were both fooled, but only one of us had been honest about the cost." A year later, to the day, I stood in front of a mirror in a small downtown restaurant. Not Maison Alouette, somewhere warmer, humbler. Soft lighting, deep wood walls, laughter that didn't feel rehearsed. I wore the red dress again. It zipped easier this time, not because I was smaller, but because I wasn't carrying so much weight. Jenna had insisted on the dinner. "You reclaimed that night," she said. "Now let's celebrate the woman who walked out of it." Around me sat people who had stayed friends from work, who never spread gossip. My lawyer, who quietly fought for every penny I'd earned, my mother, who flew in once a month during the divorce, just to sit beside me in silence. No one asked questions that started with, "Why didn't you leave sooner?" As dessert arrived, a lemon tart with a candle for ceremony more than age. My phone buzzed on the table. An unknown number. I knew it was him before I touched it. "You were right about everything. I'm getting help. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just wanted you to know. David." I stared at it for a moment, then turned my phone face down without replying. "Everything okay?" Jenna asked. "Better than okay," I said, smiling. "It's quiet." That night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, the one with wide windows, and not a single memory he could lay claim to. The city stretched beneath me like a map I had finally learned how to read. I touched the pearl earrings I'd worn that night, now symbols of something older and deeper than betrayal. Legacy, resilience. Not everything he took could stay gone. People ask me if I regret the public confrontation, if I ever feel embarrassed by the spectacle. I don't, because dignity wasn't in staying silent. It was in standing up. It was in reclaiming what was mine, me. I didn't need revenge. I needed to remember who I was before I forgot. Have you ever stayed silent for too long just to keep the peace? Did you ever realize the truth only after it broke you? Tell me in the comments. Was there a moment you finally stood up and everything changed? You're not alone. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after being torn down, even if you're still rebuilding, you deserve to be heard. Leave a heart if you've ever remembered your worth. And share the story with someone who needs to hear. You don't need revenge. You just need you back.